The transmission played in a dark room. Ray Voss sat alone at the table and listened to the voice of a man he had never met end a war he had never fought. Supreme Commander Drex of the Vorthon Empire spoke with the specific patience of someone who had said the same thing many times and expected to say it several more times before anyone listened. His terms were precise. His language was clean. His tone carried the weight of 97 years of being right. On the table in front of Ray, two things. His retirement papers, unsigned, 30 days from a life he had earned, and a photograph of his son Danny in his lieutenant's uniform, grinning at the camera the way young men grin when they believe the world is going to cooperate with their plans for it. Ray listened to the transmission until it ended. Then he sat in the silence for a moment. He picked up the retirement papers, looked at them, set them down unsigned. He stood up. "Get me a line to Joint Command," he said to the empty room. Colonel Sarah Reyes was already at the tactical display when Ray walked into the Joint Command briefing room 12 minutes later. She did not turn around when he entered. She was studying the display with the focused attention of someone trying to find something that wasn't there. "Sir," she said, "glad you came in." "Talk to me," Ray said. She turned around. Sarah Reyes was 40 years old and had the specific quality of a Marine who had stopped being surprised by bad news and had developed instead a clean, direct relationship with it. She delivered it the same way every time, fast and complete. "Sarathi Eastern Line collapsed 4 hours ago," she said. "Drex pushed through with 3 army groups simultaneously. Classic triple pressure formation. He has used it 11 times in 97 years. The Sarathi knew it was coming and still couldn't hold." She pulled up the tactical overlay. "Our observer team at position Kilo was overrun in the first hour. 12 personnel. They were there under humanitarian charter, no weapons, no tactical value." She paused. "1 second. Drex is holding them as leverage. He transmitted to Sarathi High Command 40 minutes ago. Release of the observers in exchange for Sarathi capitulation and acceptance of his standing surrender terms." Ray looked at the display. At position Kilo. At the red markers showing Drex's 3 army groups spread across the eastern sector like a hand closing into a fist. "My son," he said. "Yes, sir," Ray said. "Danny is among the 12. Ray looked at the display for 5 seconds. Exactly 5. Reyes had served under 3 commanders and she had learned to read the specific quality of a general's silence. Ray's silence was not grief and it was not panic. It was the silence of a man running numbers. "What assets do we have in range?" he said. "Nothing that should work," Ray said. "Show me what we have." She showed him. Ambassador Kale of the Sarathi Alliance arrived 20 minutes later, and he arrived angry in the specific way of a man whose dignity had been managed poorly for a long time by people who thought they were being helpful. He was tall, gray-skinned, with the bearing of a species that had been fighting a war for 97 years and had not yet figured out how to stand in a room without bracing against something. He looked at Ray, and he looked at the tactical display, and he said, "We did not request human involvement in this conflict." "I know," Ray said. "Drex has defeated 14 different alliance configurations in 97 years. Every new strategy, every new formation, every new coalition." Kale's voice was controlled, but the control was costing him something. "You will come in with human confidence and human tactics, and he will dismantle them in hours and use your failure as additional leverage against us. You will make this worse." Ray waited until he was certain Kale was finished. "How many of your people has he taken?" he said. Kale stopped. "Over 97 years," Ray said. "How many Sarathi personnel has Drex taken prisoner or killed?" The number Kale gave was quiet, the kind of quiet that numbers get when they are too large for the voice carrying them. Ray nodded. "Then we want the same thing." He pulled out the chair across from him. "Sit down, Ambassador." Kale sat down, slowly, like a man who had forgotten how. Ray spent 2 hours with the battle records. 97 years of Drex's campaigns loaded into the tactical system, every engagement documented, every victory analyzed, every strategic pattern cataloged by the Sorathi Intelligence Division with the obsessive thoroughness of people who had been trying to understand a problem for nearly a century. Ray went through it chronologically, not skimming, reading. The way he read everything, completely and in order, because he believed that the thing you needed was always in the thing you were tempted to skip. Ray's watched him from across the table. She had pulled her own chair around and was working through the same records on a secondary display, cross-referencing the tactical data with the logistics patterns, looking for the same thing Ray was looking for without knowing what it was yet. At the 90-minute mark, she said, "He's never lost." "No," Ray said. "Not once, not a single engagement in 97 years." She looked at the numbers. "That's not strategy anymore, that's something else." Ray did not respond. He was reading the record of Drex's 31st campaign, a 3-month offensive against the Sorathi Western colonies that had ended with a Sorathi surrender and subsequent renegotiation that Drex had used to extend his territorial holdings by 30%. At the 2-hour mark, Ray sat back. Ray's looked at him. "He has fought the same enemies for 97 years, Ray said. "The Sorathi, their allies, 14 different coalition configurations, but underneath all of them the same core, the same species, the same military tradition, the same way of thinking about space and distance and force." He looked at the display. He doesn't analyze anymore. He recognizes. He sees a formation and he already knows what it's going to do because he has seen it before. He sees a strategic opening and he already knows how his opponent will try to exploit it because they have tried to exploit it before. He paused. Drex isn't a strategist. He's a habit. Ray's was quiet for a moment. "So we need something he hasn't seen." "We need something he cannot process," Ray said. "Something that doesn't fit the pattern library he has been building for 97 years. He looked at the display again, at the positions of his available assets, at the vast spread of the conflict zone. "We are going to lose on purpose." Ray stared at him. "Sir." Loudly, Ray said. "We are going to enter that conflict zone and engage Drex's forces, and then fall apart exactly the way a new force falls apart when it meets something it wasn't prepared for. Disorganized retreat, broken formations, ships that appear to be running." He looked at her. "And while he is watching us fall apart and feeling confirmed in everything he already believed about late arrivals, we are going to be somewhere else entirely." Ray's looked at the display. She looked at it for a long time. Then she said, "The stealth array." "He has never encountered our stealth technology," Ray said. "The Sorathi don't have it. None of Drex's 14 opponents had it. It is not in his pattern library." He paused. "It will work exactly once. After today he will know about it and adapt. We have one shot." "One shot to end a 97-year war," Ray said. "One shot to get Danny home," Ray said. "The war ending is a side benefit." Ray's looked at him for a moment. Then she nodded and turned to her console. "I'll need 4 hours to set up the positioning." "You have 3, Ray said. She did it in 2.5. The human fleet entered the conflict zone at 600 hours on the first day, and Drex watched them come in from the command deck of his flagship, the Vorthon Dreadnought Eternal Patience, which had been his command vessel for 61 years, and which carried, in its name, the quality that had defined his entire military career. His tactical chief, Commander Veth, gave him the initial assessment in the flat professional tone that Drex preferred. Human fleet, 47 vessels of mixed classification. Entry formation is a standard aggressive wedge, primary strike elements forward, support elements distributed through the middle, flanking vessels at standard separation. Veth paused. Formation is consistent with Academy doctrine from approximately 30 years of human military development. Nothing unusual. Drex looked at the display. He looked at it for 4 minutes without speaking. His staff had learned over decades that the 4 minutes were not hesitation. They were the specific time Drex required to match what he was seeing against everything he had seen before. Predictable, he said. Standard aggressive entry from a force that believes its greatest advantage is initiative and shock. They intend to hit hard before we can consolidate. He turned to Veth. Counter formation Delta. Pull the Second Army group back to the anchor position and let them commit their forward elements. When they are extended, close the flanks. Yes, Supreme Commander. Drex watched the counter-formation assemble with the satisfaction of a craftsman watching a familiar tool perform its familiar function. He had used Delta formation 11 times. It had worked 11 times. It would work now. The human fleet advanced. Drex's counterformation closed, and the human fleet collapsed. It happened with the specific convincing disorder of something real. Ships breaking formation, drives firing in wrong directions. The communication chatter that Drex's signals team was monitoring fragmenting into the overlapping urgent voices of a command structure losing coherence. 3 of the human vessels appeared to take critical damage from the initial counter-engagement and went dark. The wedge formation dissolved into scattered groups pulling back in different directions, the support elements losing connection with the forward strike group, the flanking vessels abandoning their positions to cover the retreat of the main body. Drex watched it happen. It took 7 minutes. The late arrivals, he said quietly, learn quickly. Veth said, Supreme Commander, the human forward elements are in full retreat. Recommend pursuit with 1st and 3rd Army groups to prevent reorganization. Yes, Drex said, and move the 2nd Army group forward to consolidate the position they vacated. Do not allow them time to regroup. He looked at the display with the specific satisfaction of a pattern confirming itself. Contact the Sorathi High Command. Tell them their new allies lasted less than a day. He paused. Tell them my surrender terms remain as stated. The 3 Army groups moved. On the UEDF command ship Resolute, Ray Voss stood at the tactical display and watched Drex's 3 Army groups advance into the space his fleet had just vacated and felt nothing that showed on his face. Ray's was at the secondary console tracking the movement of every Vorthon unit in the sector. She was calling positions in a low, continuous voice, the specific focus of a tactical officer watching a situation develop in real time and measuring it against the plan. 1st Army Group advancing on Vector 7, she said. 2nd Group moving to consolidation position as projected. 3rd Group pushing through the Eastern Gap. She paused. Sir, all 3 Army groups are committed. Ray looked at the display, at the 3 red formations moving forward with the confidence of 97 years of rightness. He waited. The thing about bait was that you had to let it work completely. You could not spring the trap while the prey was still deciding. You waited until the decision was made, and the movement was committed, and there was no clean path back. Drex's 1st Army Group crossed the threshold marker. Then the 2nd. Then the 3rd. Now, Ray said. The ships that Drex's sensors had shown as destroyed or fleeing were not destroyed or fleeing. They had never been where his sensors said they were. Human stealth technology, developed over 20 years of independent research and never shared with any other civilization, had allowed Ray to place his real strike force not in the aggressive wedge that Drex had seen and countered and pursued, but in 6 positions distributed through 3 dimensions of the conflict zone. Positions chosen with the specific care of a man who had spent 2 hours reading 97 years of battle records and understood exactly how Drex's 3 Army groups would move when they believed they were pursuing a broken enemy. The positions were not behind Drex's forces. They were everywhere. Above the 1st Army Group, below the 2nd, flanking the 3rd on both sides simultaneously, and directly ahead of the path that all 3 groups were now committed to moving along. They did not appear gradually. They appeared all at once, in the specific way of something that has been there the whole time and has simply stopped being invisible, and the effect on Drex's tactical display was the effect of a picture suddenly becoming a completely different picture. The same elements rearranged in a moment into a meaning that was the opposite of what they had meant 30 seconds before. Drex's three army groups were not pursuing a retreating enemy. They had walked into a box, and the box had just closed. On the eternal patience. Commander Veth's voice, for the first time in his career under Drex, carried something that was not the flat professional tone. Supreme Commander. A pause. I am reading human vessels at coordinates 7, 12, 15, 23, 29, and 31. Another pause. Those coordinates were confirmed clear 4 minutes ago. Drex stood up from his command chair. It was the first time he had stood up during an engagement in 11 years. Veth noticed. The entire bridge noticed. Drex looked at the display. He looked at the positions of his three army groups, now deep in the sector they had advanced into with total confidence, and he looked at the human vessels appearing at 6 coordinates around them, and he ran the tactical geometry in his mind the way he had run tactical geometry for 97 years, instantly and completely, and the geometry told him something he had never had the geometry tell him before. He was surrounded. Not approximately, not partially, completely in 3 dimensions with his forces extended and their supply lines exposed and no clean formation to consolidate into because the positions that a consolidation would require were already occupied. He looked at the display for a long time. How, he said. Not a tactical question, not a request for information, a genuine question asked by a mind that had spent 97 years being the person who knew how and was encountering for the first time the experience of not knowing. Veth said, Supreme Commander, their vessels were not visible to our sensors. I do not. I know they were not visible, Drex said. His voice was still level. The level of it cost him something, but it held. I am asking how they placed them without our detection. He looked at the display. What technology produces this result? Veth had no answer. Drex looked at the display for another long moment. Then he said, defensive formations. All 3 army groups. Pull them back toward each other, maximum speed. We consolidate at the center point. He was already working the problem, already looking for the move that the situation allowed, because 97 years had taught him that there was always a move, and the move was always findable if you looked with sufficient clarity. The problem was that Ray had also spent 2 hours learning how Drex responded to being surrounded. The human vessels at coordinates 7 and 12 tightened their position as the first army group tried to pull back. The vessels at 23 and 29 matched the second army group's movement with the specific precision of units that had been positioned not for where Drex's forces currently were, but for where they would move when they tried to consolidate. Every path the 3 army groups tried to take toward each other was already covered. Drex stood at his command display and worked the problem with everything he had and found, for the first time in 97 years, that everything he had was not enough. Not because his mind was insufficient, because the problem had been built specifically against his mind, specifically against the pattern library, specifically against the way he thought, by someone who had spent 2 hours doing nothing but studying how he thought, and then constructed something his thinking could not find a clean answer to. He looked at the display for a long time. Then he sat back down. While Drex's command attention was fully consumed by 3 army groups trying to find a way out of a box that had no way out, Ray's executed the secondary operation. It had been built into the plan from the first moment. Not the main event. The reason for the main event. A single fast insertion team, 6 Marines in a light assault vehicle with the same stealth technology that had hidden the strike fleet, moving through the sector's edge toward the coordinates of the Vorthon holding facility, while every Vorthon tactical asset in the region was pointed in the opposite direction. The facility was lightly guarded. The guards that had been there had been pulled to the front line 4 hours ago when Drex pushed his 3 army groups forward, because Drex had expected a quick victory and had repositioned his rear assets accordingly. It was the small consequence of a large miscalculation, and it was the one that mattered most to Ray Voss. The insertion team went in clean. No engagement. The facility's skeleton guard withdrew when they understood what was coming without the kind of organized resistance that requires organized forces, because the organized forces were 40 light minutes away trying to find a path out of a box. 12 observers. 12 people who had been in a Vorthon holding facility for 18 hours under terms that Drex had intended to use as the final weight that broke a century of Sorathi resistance. Danny Voss was the last one out. He walked into the extraction vehicle with the specific careful movement of someone who had spent 18 hours being very still and was relearning how to move normally. He sat down. He looked at the communication screen on the vehicle's forward console. His father's face was on it. Ray looked at his son. He did the thing that men who have spent their lives controlling their expressions do when the control is no longer necessary. He looked at Danny for 1 full second without any professional distance at all. Then he said, "You okay?" Danny said, "Yeah." "Good." Ray's expression went back to the level it needed to be. "We'll talk about your career choices later." Danny laughed. It was the first laugh in the story, and it landed the way first laughs do after 18 hours of a specific kind of fear, with the whole body involved, not just the face. "Copy that, sir," Danny said. "Dad." Ray closed the channel. He stood at the tactical display and looked at the situation in the conflict zone for a moment. At 3 Vorthon army groups contained and supply lines cut. At a fleet of 47 human vessels holding positions that made the tactical geometry permanent regardless of what Drex ordered next. Then he looked at Ray's. She was already looking at him. She had been watching the extraction feed on her secondary display. 12 for 12, she said. "Good," Ray said. "Now let's finish the other thing." Drex opened the channel himself. Ray had expected to wait. Drex had the pride of 97 years of never needing to open a channel from a position of disadvantage, and Ray had built an hour into his timeline for the time that pride would require before the calculation overrode it. Drex opened the channel in 22 minutes. He did not speak immediately. The channel was open and there was silence on it, and Ray did not fill the silence because filling it was not his job right now. The silence was Drex's, and Drex needed to use it however he needed to use it. 50 seconds. Then Drex said, "You used your own retreat as the weapon." Ray said, "You taught me." A pause. "I taught you." 97 years of battle records, Ray said. Every campaign, you always pursue a retreating force. Not aggressively, not recklessly, but you always pursue. Because in 97 years of fighting the Sorathi and their allies, a retreat has always been a retreat. "Until now," Drex said. "Until now," Ray agreed. Silence longer this time. "No one," Drex said, slowly, as if the words were being constructed in real time rather than retrieved, "has ever retreated without retreating before." "No one had a reason to," Ray said, "until now." Another silence. Ray waited. He was good at waiting. 35 years of military service had given him the specific patience of someone who understood that the most important moments in a negotiation were the silences, and that filling them was almost always the wrong move. Drex said, "What are your terms?" "Release of all prisoners," Ray said. "Every holding facility, every detention under the current conflict. Complete release verified before we discuss anything else. And after we talk about what 97 years of war has cost both sides and whether the next 97 years need to look like the last 97. Ray paused. I am not interested in a surrender that produces another war in 30 years, Supreme Commander. I am interested in an ending that is actually an ending. A long silence. Then Drex said, "The prisoners will be released within 6 hours." "I will verify personally," Ray said. "Yes," Drex said, "I expect you will." The channel closed. Ray's let out a breath she had been holding for an indeterminate period. She looked at the tactical display showing 3 contained Vothon army groups and a conflict zone that had been burning for 97 years and had, in the last 48 hours, gone quiet. "Sir," she said. "Yeah," Ray said. "We just ended a century-long war." Ray looked at the display for a moment. Then he walked to the corner of the command table where his retirement papers had been sitting since he brought them aboard, a small piece of administrative reality that had been waiting patiently through everything that had happened in the last 2 days. He picked them up. He looked at them. He reached into his breast pocket and took out a pen, the specific physical pen he had been carrying for 20 years, the one his wife had given him, and that he had carried through every deployment since. He signed the papers. He set them down. He looked at Ray's, "Get me Danny." Ambassador Kale was on the command deck when Danny walked in. The ambassador had been there for most of the second day, watching the tactical display with the expression of a man seeing something that his entire prior experience had not prepared him to see. He had been quiet for a long time, the specific quiet of someone recalibrating something fundamental. Danny stopped when he saw Ray. He was cleaned up, medical cleared, back in a fresh uniform. He looked like his photograph except older in a way that 18 hours could make a person older, a specific older that was not age but experience. Ray crossed the deck and put his hand on Danny's shoulder. He did not say anything. Danny did not say anything. They stood there for a moment in the middle of the command deck of the UEDF ship Resolute, while the tactical display behind them showed a conflict zone going quiet for the first time in 97 years, and the communication channels filled with the careful formal language of armies standing down. Kale was watching them. He had been watching the tactical display, and now he was watching a father and his son standing together in a room where 2 days ago neither of them was supposed to be alive. He said, "We have been fighting him for a century." His voice was quiet, not the controlled quiet of diplomacy, the genuine quiet of a man who was still working out what he had just watched. 97 years, the best military minds of 3 generations, 14 alliance configurations. He looked at Ray. "How did you end it in 2 days?" Ray looked at the retirement papers on the corner of the table, at the pen lying across them, at the signature that meant 30 days from now he was done. He looked at Kale. "We had something you didn't," he said. Kale said, "What?" Ray glanced at his son. Danny was looking back at him with the specific expression of someone who knows the answer and is waiting to hear it said out loud. "A reason," Ray said, "to finish it by Tuesday." Kale looked at them, at the father and the son, at the retirement papers on the table, at the tactical display behind them showing 97 years of war ended in 48 hours. He did not say anything else. There was nothing else to say. Outside the viewports of the Resolute, the stars were where they had always been, indifferent and permanent, the same stars that had watched 97 years of war burn through the systems below them. They did not care that it was over. They would be there for the next war and the one after that, and all the ones that followed, patient in the way of things that exist on a scale that makes individual conflicts small. But the people in the room cared. Danny Voss cared with the specific intensity of someone who had spent 18 hours in a Vothon holding facility, thinking about the things he had not said, and the things he had not done, and making the kind of promises to himself that people make when they are not sure they will get the chance to keep them. Ray's cared with the quiet satisfaction of a Marine who had spent her career serving under commanders, and had finally served under the one who made the job mean what she had always believed it could mean. Kale cared with the specific grief of a man who understood now, standing in this room, that the century his people had spent fighting this war was a century they had spent without the one variable that had ended it, and that the variable had not been technology or strategy or military brilliance, but something smaller and more fundamental and infinitely harder to manufacture. A reason. A real one. The kind that did not come from duty or doctrine, or the long institutional logic of a war that had been going on so long that continuing it required less decision than stopping it. The kind that had a name, and a photograph on a table, and retirement papers that had been sitting unsigned for 2 days, while the man who was supposed to sign them did the last necessary thing. Ray Voss stood on the command deck of the Resolute with his hand on his son's shoulder and looked at the stars outside the viewports and thought about his wife, and about 35 years, and about all the things that a career in the military taught you, and all the things it didn't, and the specific thing that no career could teach you, that you could only learn by standing in a dark room with retirement papers in your hand and a photograph on the table, and a voice in your head that was not duty and was not doctrine. It was just love. Stubborn, inconvenient, completely non-negotiable love. The kind that ended wars.